History books love their majestic names: Rome, Athens, Alexandria. But America? It's full of towns named after bad jokes, spelling errors, and moments when settlers clearly just gave up. Today we're digging into 33 of the funniest, weirdest, and most ridiculous place names in the country, each with a backstory that's somehow even stranger than the name itself. 1. Let's start in the great state of Texas, with a town that sounds like the beginning of a knock-knock joke: Ding Dong. No, it wasn't founded by a famous bell maker or a group of pranksters. The story is much simpler and somehow much dumber. 2 of the early settlers were named, and you can't make this up, Bell. 2 men, both with the last name Bell. A local artist was hired to paint a sign for their store, and a neighbor, overflowing with comedic genius, suggested he paint 2 bells on it with the words "Ding Dong" underneath. It was a silly throwaway joke, but in a perfect storm of community spirit and a love for the absurd, the name actually stuck. An entire town's identity, forged from a single goofy pun. 2. Next up, we have a town that literally sold its soul for fame. In 1950, the town of Hot Springs, New Mexico, was just another quiet community. That is, until the host of a popular NBC radio quiz show, a guy named Ralph Edwards, issued a bizarre challenge. He would broadcast his show's 10th anniversary episode from the first town in America, willing to rename itself after his program. The show's name? Truth or Consequences. While most towns probably had a good laugh and moved on, the leaders of Hot Springs saw an opportunity. They held a vote, and the citizens officially chose to trade their perfectly normal name for a radio show title. It was a marketing stunt of epic proportions, and it worked. The show came, the town got its publicity, and the name remains a permanent monument to the time a whole community said, "Sure, why not?" 3. Some names aren't weird when they're created, but time has a funny way of making things awkward. Take Looneyville, Texas, for example. When it was established back in 1870, the name made perfect sense. It was founded by and named in honor of a perfectly respectable man named John Looney. Back then, Looney was just a surname, no different from Smith or Jones. But then the 20th century happened. The word loony evolved into slang for crazy, eccentric, or just plain nuts. Poor John Looney's legacy was unintentionally transformed into a punchline. The town, once a simple namesake, now sounds like the official capital of cartoons and wacky antics. It's a powerful lesson that your good name is only one linguistic shift away from becoming a joke for future generations. 4. Forget poetic names inspired by rolling hills or majestic rivers. The early settlers of Scratch Ankle, Alabama, were far too practical and probably too irritated for that. The name is a brutally honest description of their daily life. The area was completely overrun with thorny briars, brambles, and blackberry bushes. There were no manicured lawns or paved sidewalks, just a relentless assault of prickly vegetation at ankle level. Every time they stepped outside, they were guaranteed to get their ankles scratched to pieces. So when it came time to name their new home, they didn't choose Hopewell or Pleasant Valley. They chose the one thing that united them all in shared itchy misery: Scratch Ankle. It's less of a name and more of a permanent historical complaint. 5. While some weird names are funny, others have a genuinely dark and creepy origin. Welcome to Booger Hole, West Virginia. This isn't a place named after a funny-looking rock or a local prank. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, this small, isolated community became the site of a terrifying series of unsolved murders and disappearances. People would vanish without a trace, and bodies would turn up with no explanation. With law enforcement being scarce, local residents grew terrified, convinced that a malevolent entity, a booger or boogeyman, was haunting the hollow. The name became a literal warning, a place whispered about in hushed tones. People eventually abandoned the area out of sheer fear, and Booger Hole remains a chilling reminder that sometimes a strange name is born not from humor, but from real-life horror. 6. There are several theories about how Hell, Michigan got its name, but the most popular one is also the most hilarious. Back in the 1840s, a group of local farmers would frequently travel to a distillery and grist mill in the area to sell their grain, and, more importantly, enjoy some of the whiskey. When their wives would ask where their absent husbands were, the common exasperated reply was, "He's gone to hell again." The name just sort of caught on. Another story claims a German visitor exclaimed, "So schön hell," meaning so beautifully bright. But let's be honest, the story about disgruntled wives is way better. Today, the town fully embraces its name, with slogans like "Go to hell" and selling deeds to 1 square inch of hell for tourists. It's a masterclass in leaning into your weird reputation. 7. Imagine you're a rugged gold prospector in the Alaskan wilderness. You've struck it rich, and you and your buddies decide to name your new settlement after the abundant local wildlife to celebrate. You see a bird everywhere. It's your main source of food. It's a ptarmigan. Perfect. There's just one problem. You have absolutely no idea how to spell ptarmigan. P-T-A-R-M-I-G-A-N. The miners looked at that silent P and the confusing sequence of vowels and collectively decided, nope. In a moment of beautiful, pragmatic laziness, one of them likely said, "You know what? It looks like a chicken. Let's just call it Chicken." And so, Chicken, Alaska, was born. It stands today as a proud monument to the idea that sometimes the path of least resistance is the one that ends up on a map forever. 8. In the pre-internet age, how did you make sure your business stood out? Well, if you were Curtis Howe Springer, you invented a word designed to be the absolute final entry in any alphabetical list. In 1944, Springer, a radio evangelist and self-proclaimed medical expert, established a health spa in the Mojave Desert. He needed a name that would grab attention and be unforgettable. So he concocted the name Zyzex, pronounced Z-Y-Zix. His logic was simple but brilliant. In any index, any atlas, any directory, his resort, Zix Mineral Springs, would be dead last. It was a bizarre and ingenious marketing ploy. The name itself means absolutely nothing, but it achieved its goal perfectly, becoming an icon of roadside Americana and a testament to one man's quest to have the last word. Literally. 9. All right, for this next one, you might want to cover the kids' ears. Or don't, it's funnier that way. Welcome to Slickpoo, Idaho. Yes, you heard me right. Slickpoo. It sounds like the unfortunate aftermath of eating gas station chili. But the real story is somehow even more wild. The town was named in honor of Josiah Slickpoo, a respected member of the Nez Perce tribe who was instrumental in establishing a local Catholic mission. So let's get this straight. A genuinely helpful, historically significant man lends his name to a new community, and his legacy is to become the butt of every bathroom joke for the next 150 years. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. You have to imagine his name meant something noble and profound in his native language. But when filtered through English, it became, well, that. Poor Josiah. He deserved a statue, but instead, he got a punchline. 10. Some towns are named after founding fathers or revolutionary ideas. And then there's Hot Coffee, Mississippi, a town named with the exact same level of creativity you use to name your Wi-Fi network. The story is blissfully simple. Back in the 19th century, an innkeeper named L.J. Davis ran a successful stop for travelers. What was his claim to fame? He made a darn good cup of coffee. He didn't use fancy beans or complicated brewing methods. He just made coffee that was hot, and that was enough. When it came time to name the burgeoning community, they didn't overthink it. They didn't name it Davisville or Traveler's Rest. They named it after the one thing everyone could agree on. The coffee was, in fact, hot. It's the most brilliantly lazy, no-nonsense town name in America. No false advertising, no grand promises, just hot coffee. 11. Here's a story about how dealing with government bureaucracy can lead to weaponized holiday cheer. The residents of a small Indiana town wanted to name their home Santa Fe. Simple enough, right? Wrong. The U.S. Post Office, in its infinite wisdom, rejected the name, claiming there were already too many Santa Fe's. The townspeople were stuck. Legend has it they gathered on Christmas Eve, frustrated and out of ideas. Then, in a moment of either divine inspiration or eggnog-fueled madness, they decided to lean all the way in. If they couldn't be Santa Fe, they'd just name the town after the big man himself, Santa Claus. And so, a town became Christmas, 365 days a year. All because of a denied postal application. It's the ultimate hold my beer moment in municipal naming history, creating a year-round headache for parents who now have to explain why their GPS is taking them to Santa Claus, Indiana, in the middle of July. 12. During the Great Depression, people had to get creative to survive. But the folks in one Florida community didn't just survive, they created a town name based on a single, recurring snack run. The story goes that two young boys made a regular trip to the local general store. Their currency of choice? 2 eggs. Every time they'd walk in and trade 2 eggs from their family farm for a bag of sugar. This wasn't a one-time thing, it was their routine. The transaction became so iconic, so synonymous with the store in the area, that people just started calling the place 2 Egg. That's it. A whole town named after the bartering habits of 2 kids with a sweet tooth. It wasn't founded on gold or oil. It was founded on a fair trade for basic baking supplies. It's arguably the most adorably specific and financially humble origin story on the entire map. 13. If you've ever sat through a pointless meeting that could have been an email, you will understand the spiritual exhaustion that created Why Not, North Carolina. The community had been arguing for what felt like an eternity over what to call their new town. Every suggestion was shot down. Tempers were flaring. People were getting hangry. Finally, one fed-up resident, having reached the absolute end of his rope, stood up and declared, "Why not name the town Why Not, and we can all go home?" It wasn't a serious suggestion. It was a cry for help, a desperate plea to end the madness. But to his surprise, the exhausted, defeated crowd just sort of nodded in agreement. And so, the town was officially named after the verbal equivalent of a shrug. Why Not isn't just a place, it's a monument to collective apathy and the beautiful moment when everyone in the room agrees to just give up. 14. Some town names are the result of history, some of geography, and some are the result of a dad joke so powerful it warped reality and put itself on a map. I present to you the town of George in the state of Washington. Get it? George Washington. This was not an accident. This was a deliberate, calculated act of comedic brilliance. The town's founders looked at a map, saw their location in Washington state, and seized the opportunity with both hands. They committed to the bit so hard it's almost inspiring. This isn't just a town, it's a living, breathing pun. It's the kind of joke your uncle tells at Thanksgiving, except this one has a mayor and a fire department. You have to respect the sheer, unadulterated dedication to a gag. Every resident of George Washington is living inside a punchline, and frankly, that's a level of comedic commitment we should all aspire to. 15. In the late 1890s, a massive discovery of natural gas was made in Kansas, promising to make a lot of people very rich. A boomtown sprang up overnight, filled with hopeful prospectors and entrepreneurs. They needed a name, and they needed it fast. So they gathered the greatest minds in the area, pooled their creative genius, and came up with gas. Just gas. That's it. It's like striking gold and naming the town Shiny Rock. They literally found a massive pocket of flammable vapor and decided to just call the place that. The naming committee must have lasted all of 3 seconds. What did we find? Gas. All right, town's called Gas. Who's hungry? It's so blunt, so utterly devoid of poetry or imagination that it circles back around to being hilarious. Welcome to Gas, Kansas. We hope your visit is a blast. 16. When you're trying to attract new settlers to your town, you usually want to highlight the positives. The clean air, the friendly people, the fertile land. The founders of Fleetown, Ohio, chose a different strategy: brutally honest, disgusting advertising. The town got its name from its very first public establishment, a tavern that was apparently so thoroughly and biblically infested with fleas that it became the area's single most defining feature. Forget the whiskey or the camaraderie. This place was known for the plague of blood-sucking parasites. Naming your town Flea Town is the 19th century equivalent of opening a 5-star restaurant and calling it the E. coli Cafe. It's an act of marketing self-sabotage so profound, it's almost avant-garde. You weren't just visiting Flea Town, you were taking a part of it, a very itchy part, home with you. 17. Some places have names that are subtly misleading. And then there's Boring, Oregon, a town whose name is a full-blown assault on your expectations, only to reveal the most boring truth imaginable. You see it on a map and think, finally, a town that's honest about itself. You imagine the town's main attraction is watching paint dry. But the hilarious truth is that it's not named for the feeling of soul-crushing monotony. It's named after a man, a real person named William H. Boring. Yes, a guy with the last name Boring founded a town. You can't write this stuff. The universe just hands it to you. The best part? The town has fully embraced its fate, forming a league of extraordinary communities with Dull, Scotland, and Bland, Australia. They literally found their people. It's a global alliance of uninspiring names, and honestly, that's the most exciting thing about it. 18. If you've ever bought a Panasonic stereo or a Sony TV from the back of a van, you'll understand the business strategy behind Zilwaukee, Michigan. In the mid-19th century, the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, was a booming destination for immigrants. A couple of clever land speculators in Michigan saw this and had a brilliantly unethical idea. They founded a new town and gave it a name that sounded just similar enough to trick people. They called it Zilwaukee. The entire town was basically a 19th century phishing scam. You can just imagine weary German immigrants getting off the train, looking around at the empty fields and saying, "Wait a minute, this doesn't look like the beer-filled paradise we were promised." This is the Great Value brand of Milwaukee. It's a town founded on a typo, designed to prey on the geographically challenged. 19. When you hear the name Frankenstein, Missouri, your mind immediately goes to castles, lightning storms, and angry villagers with pitchforks. You expect the mayor to be a 7-foot-tall dude with a bolt in his neck. But the reality is, once again, hilariously mundane. The town was named in the 1890s by a man named Gottfried Franken, who donated the land for the town's Catholic church. That's it. A nice guy named Franken did a nice thing, but because one British author decided to write a horror novel, his perfectly normal German surname is now forever associated with reanimated corpses. Imagine being a kid from that town. Where are you from? Frankenstein. Oh, cool. Is your dad a mad scientist? No, he's an accountant, and he's very disappointed in your lack of historical accuracy. 20. Many places are named after battles, but only one, to my knowledge, was named after a battle that involved breakfast food. Welcome to Egg Harbor, Wisconsin. The story goes that in 1825, a fleet of fur trading boats stopped in a calm bay. The men were bored, tensions were high, and someone had a surplus of eggs. What followed was an all-out naval food fight. Men in canoes started pelting each other with eggs, turning the pristine bay into a chaotic, yolk-filled war zone. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated professional immaturity. When the last egg was thrown and the carnage settled, they decided to commemorate the glorious, cholesterol-fueled conflict by naming the place Egg Harbor. It stands as a timeless lesson. Never underestimate the destructive power of grown men with too much time on their hands and access to a chicken coop. 21. Slaughter Beach, Delaware, sounds like the setting for a low-budget horror movie, and honestly, its origin story doesn't help. There are two competing theories. The first, and more boring one, is that it was named after a local postmaster in the 18th century, a man named William Slaughter. Okay, that's one way to go. But the second, infinitely more metal theory, is that the beach got its name from the sheer number of horseshoe crabs that come ashore every year to mate, with many dying and littering the sand. So, the name is either a tribute to a government employee or a G-rated description of a massive annual invertebrate death-a-thon. Either way, it's not exactly a name that screams family-friendly vacation spot. It's more of a maybe keep your shoes on kind of place. 22. Some town names are a mystery wrapped in an enigma. Mosquitoville, Vermont, is not one of those. There is zero ambiguity here. They could have called it Evergreen Valley or Mountain's Rest, but the founding fathers chose radical, brutal honesty. The place was settled in a swampy, marshy area, which is basically a 5-star, all-inclusive resort for mosquitoes. The air wasn't just filled with them, the mosquitoes were the air. They were the dominant life form. They probably held public office. Naming your town Mosquitoville is a profound act of surrender. It's admitting that you don't own the land. You're just a walking blood bank for the tiny winged landlords who were there first. It's less a name and more a permanent public health warning. 23. Prepare yourself for an origin story born from pure, unadulterated randomness. In the late 1800s, the postmaster of a small Kentucky community, a man named Dabney A. Davis, needed to name his town. The problem? His handwriting was apparently so awful that it looked like a doctor's prescription written during an earthquake. Worried that any name he wrote would be misread, he opted for the simplest solution, a number. But which number? He didn't consult folklore or astrology. He just reached into his pocket, counted his change, and came up with 88 cents. And that was it. The town was named 88. This is a level of arbitrary decision-making that borders on performance art. An entire community's identity was determined by the loose change in one man's pants. It's a miracle he didn't have a hole in his pocket, or the town might be called Lint. 24. If you thought 88 was a lazy way to name a town, allow me to introduce you to 56, Arkansas, a town that makes 88 look like a work of creative genius. In 1918, the residents petitioned the state to create a new school district. The government, in its infinite creativity, processed the paperwork and assigned them a number, School District 56. And when it came time to name the town itself, they just kept the number. That's it. There was no pocket change, no funny story, just cold, hard bureaucracy. It's the municipal equivalent of being named Subject 56 in a science experiment. It's the most soulless, uninspired, government-issue name in the entire country. You can't even get a cool nickname out of it. Welcome to 56. Please, try to contain your excitement. 25. Welcome to Cleveland, Ohio, a city whose name is the result of what is essentially the world's most historically significant typo. The city was originally founded in 1796 and named Cleveland in honor of its founder, General Moses Cleveland. Notice the A in there. For years, everything was fine. Then, a local newspaper was preparing its first issue. When they tried to typeset the name Cleveland on the masthead, it was just a little too long to fit. Instead of, using a slightly smaller font, the editor made a bold executive decision. Just drop the A, and it stuck. An entire major American city is walking around with a name that was edited for length like a tweet. It's the ultimate proof that sometimes the most lasting changes in history aren't made by generals or politicians, but by a frustrated printer on a deadline. 26. The naming of Portland, Oregon wasn't decided by a council of elders or a divine vision. It was decided by the 19th century equivalent of a brodown. The two founders, Asa Lovejoy from Boston, Massachusetts, and Francis Pettygrove from Portland, Maine, both wanted to name the new settlement after their hometown. They couldn't agree. So they did what any two mature, forward-thinking city planners would do. They settled it with a coin flip. A single, solitary penny toss decided the fate of a future metropolis. Let that sink in. One of the largest cities in the Pacific Northwest could have been called Boston, Oregon, if a piece of copper had landed differently. The entire culture, the whole Keep Portland Weird vibe, was determined by pure 50-50 chance. The actual coin, now known as the Portland penny, is on display, a permanent monument to the fact that major historical decisions are sometimes just a glorified game of heads or tails. 27. When you see a town named Embarrass, Minnesota, you can't help but feel a little sorry for it. It sounds like a place where everyone walks around blushing and apologizing for their own existence. You expect the town motto to be, "Sorry to bother you." But the name has absolutely nothing to do with shame or awkwardness. It comes from the French fur traders who first mapped the area. They came across a local river that was so full of logs, rocks, and other debris that it was incredibly difficult to navigate with their canoes. They called it the Rivière d'Embarras, which literally means river of hindrances, or obstacle river. So the town is named after a frustratingly clogged waterway. It's a permanent reminder that sometimes things are just a pain in the neck to get through, which, when you think about it, is a far more relatable concept than public humiliation.